Welcome back to Untaming Masculinity, the podcast where we tackle issues relevant to men and their journeys to reclaim their masculinity. I'm Dan, and as always, joined by my good friend Brad. What's going on today?
It's very early over here, so I'm just waking up. I look pretty haggard, but
it's a good thing we're not doing video right now then.
Yeah, how about you?
Things are good. It's we're recording this on Father's Day weekend, so got a couple of things planned with the family and just trying to kind of get through the weekend. So
yeah.
It's good. Things are good, though. Today, we wanted to talk about one of the simplest words in the English language, the word no. And this has come from some recent experiences that both Brad and I have had in our lives in having to say no or choosing not to say no. So we wanted to start with talking about the concept of why men are simply wired, or why some men are simply wired to say yes all the time. So go ahead.
Yeah, that's me. I think about this a lot. This is actually kind of an idea that I was thinking about as I was walking through an amusement park with my family the other day that I shot over to you, because I realized that through life I either said yes or I just couldn't say no to anybody. A big reason why was because I was a nice guy. You know, somebody, even if it was somebody I wasn't interested in hanging out with, said, "Hey, Brad, let's go do something." I'd say, "Sure." Or if there was some activity I didn't necessarily want to do, "Hey, you want to do it?" "Sure." Or if there was a relationship that I was in where it came to breaking up, it was really hard for me to just be like, "No, I don't want to date you." And it boiled down to this idea of trying to be a people pleaser, trying to always let people down easily. The idea of being abrupt or hurting their feelings or anything of that nature always intimidated me. And I think a lot of guys, obviously not every guy, but a lot of guys are wired that way in the sense of telling somebody no, letting them down difficultly. It hurts and it's kind of terrifying. And does that necessarily make sense to an outsider who doesn't get that? No. Nice guys have it's a very complex behavioral thing in that saying no seems so easy, but it can be so hard. I know you don't come from that same background mentally of having like the nice guy difficulty. So why would you think that some guys have a hard time saying no?
I'll back up a little bit there and say that while I don't see myself in that nice guy realm, I do have a hard time saying no in certain situations. Work is one of them.
Yeah.
Social, what's the word? It's like social settings in terms of like, do you want to coach your kid's team? Do you want to, help in this community situation? That kind of stuff. I have a hard time saying no. So
why?
When I was thinking about this, when you sent this over, I was thinking about it, and the word incapable came to mind. And it is my belief that a lot of men refuse to say no because they believe it shows a level of them being incapable, meaning that they're saying no because they can't get it done, not because they don't want to do it or it doesn't fit their needs, their agenda, or they don't have time or they need to prioritize other things. But it's just the pure fact of if I say no, and especially if I say no without an explanation, then it just looks as though I can't do that task. And I'm a strong, capable man. Of course I can do that task. So we take on more and we take on more. And as men, we also have this innate desire or innate need to just put more on our shoulders and to be the people who just carry the burden. And I think by saying no, it doesn't allow us to do that. And it shows a perceived weakness. It's not a weakness to say no, but it shows in our minds a perceived weakness in our capability, in our ability to be a man.
That actually resonates a lot for a lot of men, right? Like you talked about incapability. You think of incompetence. You think of inability. And no man wants to feel inadequate or incapable of doing something. And I think of so many scenarios in my life, and I can think of many scenarios in the lives of others where they simply didn't want to say no or couldn't say no physically because they didn't want to look less manly in some capacity. You talked about in work when you think of people taking on projects, biting off way more than they can chew. You think of the husband at home who has a domineering wife or a wife who expects a lot of him. And he simply can't say no because it's emasculating if my wife asks me to do something and I simply can't do it. So there's almost this unfair mental obligation, if you will, to make sure you do that. And in some capacity, it's because you don't want to feel inadequate. In some capacity, you do it because you want to show your worth. You know, men are always constantly trying to show, you know, it's, if we go way back evolutionarily, we talk about Darwin, we talk about all that stuff. Men want to look strong. Men want to look powerful. Men want to look competent because that historically that's been attractive to the opposite sex. If you're looking for a mate, you want to look tough and adequate and strong and capable. But to your point, I do think that you're absolutely spot on. Inadequacy, incapability. And we as men, we want to be capable. So how do we go about doing that? We say yes, oftentimes when we shouldn't.
A lot of what we just talked about is ego.
Of course.
Right. It's I'm capable. I want to show that I can do it. I can handle the extra work. I can handle the extra responsibility. I am a strong, capable man. I can knock this out. What we haven't talked about yet is the fear part of it.
Yeah.
A lot of men, and myself included, will not say no because they fear the results of saying no. And I'll give you a few examples. I've had situations at work where I've had more and more and more and more work put on me, and I fear saying no because I fear the outcome of that. Am I going to be viewed as not up to par? Am I going to be viewed as not, I mean, we go back to the capable part here, but am I going to have this opportunity presented again? This is the big one. You know, and what does that do for my career down the road? When's that opportunity going to present itself again? Those are the kind of things where the concept of, if I don't take this opportunity now, when will it present itself again in the future, or will it? Have I completely destroyed the opportunity forever because I'm saying no right now?
I have a very interesting kind of situation I've been going through that I think about a lot. I can't tell you how many times I've told you about my sprinkler system at my house. Just to back up, a big thing about me is I've always felt a level of inadequacy in terms of some things that I can or can't do. Like, as a man, you know, men should be able to do some electrical work around the house. Men should be able to do, you know, men should be able to fix their car. There are some of those things that I can do, but I'd always felt fairly incompetent, especially when I was around my brothers-in-law and my father-in-law. These are guys who can do things and who've always been pretty competent when it comes to handyman stuff. So anytime we'd get together with my wife's family, it'd be like a level of inadequacy. And so when my wife has asked me to do things, I'll say yes before I know what I'm getting myself into. And oftentimes that means I don't ask the requisite amount of questions or go for help as I need to out of fear of inadequacy, for one, and fear of, you know, what's my wife going to think if I just simply can't do this thing that she's asking me to do, which again probably comes down to inadequacy, a little bit of ego. So I've been struggling the last couple of months with drip line issues. I'd never set up a drip line before, and I didn't ask the right questions. So it was a lot of stops and starts, and I really struggled. And in the back of my mind, there was always this fear of telling my wife, hey, I can't do this without asking for help. I'm not able to complete this until I know what I'm doing. And she would say, hey, Brad, how's the drip line coming? How are things coming? We need to get this done. Like, it'll get there. It'll get there. I'm working on it. I've got some good things. I'm watching some YouTube videos, you know, and some of that might have had some dishonesty layered in it because I felt almost frozen because I'm like, well, I've got to deliver on this. We've got to do this, but I'm going to let my wife down if I do it wrong. Like, there was also a feeling of doing it wrong that kind of persisted. And so I kind of screwed up a couple times. I put like the 1/4-inch drip line right into a funny pipe. And if anybody's done irrigation, they know that's stupid. And it ended up delaying me. And ultimately, we finally got it figured out. I finally did everything I needed to, asked the right questions, humbled myself enough to go to a sprinkler store, talk to them. They talked me through it, watch some YouTube videos, talk to my brother-in-law. So as soon as I took those steps, I finally got it finished. But the fact of the matter was, because I was unwilling to say, hey, I can't do this right now. This is something that I need to focus on and work on, but you've got to give me some time. Rather than simply say that, which in a way is saying no, I said, yeah, I've got it. Yeah, I've got it. Yeah, I've got it. And it led to a lot of frustration from her because it took me a long time to do it right. It set us back. I got it done in mid-June when it was already pushing 90 degrees when I could have had it done in May. And simply because I was scared of saying no. Because I've got this. I'm a man. I want to prove my worth. I want to show that I'm as competent and capable as my brothers-in-law, when simply that level of humility that was needed to simply ask some questions and be real and set expectations wasn't there. And I know it's something that frustrated her, so it's something I need to work through.
So did you not ask the questions because you were afraid to ask the questions, or because you didn't know the questions to ask?
It's a little bit of both, right? I didn't know the questions to ask, so I was afraid to even get to that point to be, okay, I don't know what I'm doing, where to start, where do I go, right? Like, so there were some things I probably could have asked, but most of it came down to the fact that I didn't know where to ask, but there's a level of fear or ego or whatever you want to call it to where I couldn't present myself as, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Somebody's got to help me.
The reality then is that at the beginning, you should have said, no, hon, I can't do that because I don't know how to do it, but let me go find out what it takes. That probably would have been the better start to that conversation. And then you guys could have made a decision accordingly.
Admittedly, I did tell her that, but I also told her I want to find out and do this myself. And she's like, cool, I want you to do that too. Gotcha. But then paralysis set in or whatever, and it set me back.
Yeah, the fear sets in.
Yeah.
When you start to dig into something and you get down that rabbit hole and realize you've probably bitten off a lot more than you could chew.
Yeah.
And that goes back to what I was talking about, though, right? It's that decision to say yes because you don't know what's going to happen if you say no.
Exactly. Like feelings of inadequacy or feelings of incompetence. And
right.
That's the thing, is everybody thinks of men and toxic masculinity and puffing their chests out. Most of that is for show and total BS. Most men struggle with feelings of inadequacy constantly, all the time. Like, there's a reason that the suicide rates for men are significantly higher than women. Like, we feel inadequate. We struggle. Like, we feel like we've got a lot of weight on our shoulders. And a lot of that's self-imposed.
I 100% agree with that. The idea that we're just supposed to know it all and be able to do it all, a lot of men internalize that. And we're in a society where talking about your feelings or talking about how you're struggling is considered weak if you want to be, a masculine man.
Yeah. So
it's this double-edged sword that guys are fighting 100%. And there is nothing wrong with asking for help. There is nothing wrong with saying, hey, I don't know how to do this. Either I want to learn, can you help me? Or I don't have time to learn how to do this. I can afford to pay somebody who does know how to do this for their services. There's nothing wrong with either one of those. And I'm going to beat you up a little bit here, but
bring it on.
The worst decision is to kind of do what you did, is to say yes and then just flounder in your decision and not be proactive about progress. There was a point very early on in your decision where you probably should have said, you know what? I've bitten off more than I can chew. Let me get somebody involved who's an expert, either to teach me how to do it or to just do it for me. And I'll learn my lesson and we'll move forward from there. But instead, you kind of, you floundered in your inability to say no and caused more problems than you needed to.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
No, of course. It's a microcosm of many things that I've done in my life. And unfortunately, many things I've done in my marriage. And it's something that I was acutely aware of. And I think that that's part of the reason I swear I've been talking to you about sprinkler problems for like a year. And almost all of them were tied to a drip line. Like I had the wherewithal, and my wife did as well, to have one of my brothers-in-law come up from a town down in southern Utah with his family. And they all helped me and showed me how to put down a sprinkler line. Like we trenched, we did all that stuff. And I learned it and it was awesome. So I just kind of was like on it by his side watching him do it. And kind of participating, I realized how easy it was to do. But then when it came to the drip line, which was the last part, I was like, oh, I got this. And like ego came in, and then I didn't ask the right questions. And obviously we know that story because I just told it.
Yeah. But
there's so many scenarios where I've done that same thing throughout my life, where I've been given a task or I've been asked to do something and I couldn't say no. A lot of them in my marriage, some of them with my friends, some of them obviously with work, as we've alluded to. And that inaction due to feelings of inadequacy or fear has always left me worse off than where I started. And that's just the unfortunate reality of what happens when you say yes to something that maybe you shouldn't necessarily say yes to, or when you simply can't say no, is you flounder, you struggle, you get in an impasse, and those impasses and struggles and flounderings, they're uncomfortable because when shit hits the fan, you realize I didn't do what I should have done, and now I'm in a worse situation or predicament than I could have been, and that's a crappy thing to dig your way out of. So there's a certain level of intentionality that comes with saying no, with being fully forthcoming and saying, okay, while I do want to do this, I don't necessarily know everything that I'm doing. It's going to take some time. Like, that's a certain level of proactivity, humility, and self-recognition that would have gone a long way in countless number of scenarios that I put myself in throughout the years.
That brings up a good point. We've identified a lot of reasons why saying no is bad, or not saying no is bad. How do we work on that? How do we identify the situations where we should be saying no? And how do we say no with enough grace and I don't know what the word I'm looking for here is, but the right way to say no so that you're not limiting yourself in the future for future opportunities.
It's almost like letting somebody down easily, but doing so in a healthy way.
It's kind of like that, yeah.
Kind of, yeah. So saying no it's difficult, but the recognition of knowing to say no, I don't think is very hard. And that sounds confusing. That sounds like it's almost a dichotomy, but it's not. Like, any man knows that when he's asked to do something and he takes it on, but he knows he can't, he knows in that moment, almost always, maybe not every time, but almost always, if he should be saying no or not. A lot of men are like, yeah, I probably shouldn't do that, but yeah, sure. They'll have that conversation with themselves. So it's very important for a man to let go of the ego. If you're feeling scared or fearful, we've talked about this in previous episodes. Think about what's the absolute worst thing that could happen if you just simply say no. It's really easy for men to catastrophize and think worst case scenario is always going to play out if you don't do what somebody expects of you. Like, your wife's going to divorce you, you're going to lose a promotion opportunity at your work, you're going to lose your job, you're going to lose that friend. In reality, how often are those things going to play out if you simply say no? Almost never. Right? And if it's in a situation where those things are potentially compromised, you'll know. So it's very important to, one, drop the ego. If you want to say yes to something, but you don't necessarily have the skills, tools, or time to do it, you can approach that conversation and be like, look, I would love to do that for you, but right now I simply don't have the time or the bandwidth or the knowledge or the understanding. I want to have those things, but I don't right now. And that gives you optionality. That lets somebody down easily because they know where you're coming from. If you tell your wife no to, let's just say your wife wants you to, I don't know, replace a water heater at your house, something crazy that no husband should ever do. You'd say, look, babe, as great as it would be to replace a water heater, I'm not equipped to do that. I think that's a bad idea. Let's get somebody in there to do it. So you're not watching some YouTube video trying to figure out how to swap out a water heater. You set those expectations properly. So if you're presented with a situation where it's something you want to do, but you don't have the skill set to do it, it's not going to hurt you or hurt that person to tell them no. It's in your best interest to do so. And if you look at that situation, you know that that's something you don't know how to do, but you might be interested in it. Similar to my situation with the drip line of saying, I would like to do that. I have no idea how to. It may take me some time. I may need to get some other people involved, but I want to do that. So rather than take that burden on yourself, which is entirely ego driven, drop the freaking ego, look at things, think what the worst that could happen is, and then proceed with transparency, honesty, and most importantly, proactivity. You have to proactively say, I don't know what to do here. I want to do it. Here's how I'm going to go about figuring out how to do it, and then execute on that. You have to be a man of your word.
You hit on two words in there that really kind of resonated with me. The first is bandwidth, specifically in a job setting or work setting.
Yeah.
This is a tactic that has been used on me multiple times, and it's a tactic that I use all the time with my employees. And it's the slow, consistent loading of an employee until you find their breaking point. And it's not done with a bad intention at all. It's done to determine how much that employee can take on. And it allows the employer to understand what they're working with. So I've got I'll give it a real world example right now. I've got a young guy that I hired as a manufacturing engineer a couple months ago. I've slowly just been giving him more and more and more responsibility, and I'm trying to see where he breaks. And it's not so that I can point a finger and say, oh, you can't do the job, whatever. I honestly want to know how much I can offload onto him and how resourceful he is to the company. If it's 110% of what I want him to do, great. If it's 80% of what I want him to do, okay. But I know, and I'm not going to chastise him when he says, hey, calls uncle and says, I'm done. Like, I'm tapped out. I am at my bandwidth. I cannot take on another task. That's great. Then I know the parameters that I can work within. We talked about guardrails the other day in one of our podcasts, and now I've got my guardrails for this guy. And I can work on taking a look at how he does the tasks that fill his time and seeing if we can create efficiencies in his processes to add more work. But him saying no is instrumental to this whole process.
Yeah.
And the idea is that you don't want to tell the person that you're doing that, because then it puts a variable into the experiment that makes it not give you good results.
Yeah. I mean, any man listening to this, you, me, put yourself in the shoes of your employee. Most men in that situation, what do they not want to do? They don't want to say no. My boss is asking me to do all this stuff. I keep saying yes. I keep taking it all on. I'm at a breaking point. We actually have a mutual friend right now who's got a lot of stuff on his plate at a new job. And you and I have talked to him about this concept. It's your boss wants you to tell him no. That's the thing. That's exactly what you just said. You want him to come back and say, I've got too much on my plate right now. So you understand his bandwidth. My boss right now, he's awesome. I think I may have mentioned this on a previous episode. Hands down, the best boss I've ever had. He's also very transparent with me. When I started in the role that I'm in, he told me, I'm going to give you a lot. I need you to tell me no. You have to tell me no when I've given you too much. And he constantly reminds me of that. And now I'm at a point where I'm starting to do the same, like learning to delegate and starting to see where some of the people under me are at. And it came from that understanding of saying no is not a bad thing. It's what he wants you to do. It's what you want that employee to do. But as men, it's so easy for us to say, I can't say no. And then we reach breaking points. We get stressed out. We have breakdowns at work. We freak out simply because we think that our boss just keeps giving us more and more and more and more and more, when simply every boss is doing the same thing, trying to find those guardrails, those limits. So it's a really interesting point.
And I'll add too that your boss giving you all that work is a form of him saying no, because it's mostly very easy, but it would be easier for your boss to say, you know what, I'll just do it myself. I know how to do it. I don't have to train somebody. I don't have to rely on somebody. I don't have to worry about if they're doing it right. I don't have to worry about if they're sick or their kid gets, has an accident or whatever. I can just do it and I can get it done. Them handing that work off to you is a form of them saying, no, I can't handle this, or no, the level of this task can be done at their level and I can concentrate on other stuff. So I'm going to hand it off.
Yep.
The other thing that you hit on before that I wanted to talk about too, and it goes hand in hand with this, is knowledge. I want my employees, when I give them something, to say, hey boss, I'd love to do that. I have no idea how to start. It goes back to what you talked about with our mutual friend. Absolutely. I want to take on more responsibility. If you can, obviously say no if you can't, if you don't have the bandwidth, but also be able to say, I want to learn how to do this. It's either going to take you teaching me how to do it or me doing some research, which means it's going to take longer. I might screw it up. Do we have that time for me to learn this process this time around? Or can we set up a plan so that I can learn how to do this, by watching you do it this time, or whatever that is. But that knowledge part and understanding where the limitations are in your knowledge, and having the ability to acknowledge that you don't know it all and will need help learning how to do something, and communicating that to people is critical in this whole process of saying no.
That's the art of delegation. When you and I were in Maine for that Order of Man event last year, I remember touring the Origin facility, and the guy giving us the tour said something that I'd heard before, but for some reason when he said it in that moment, it's stuck with me, and I think about it all the time. And it was, find a way to make yourself replaceable. So many men, when it comes to knowledge transfer, they don't want to teach somebody else how to do something. Oh, I know how to do it best. I have to do it best. Like, I could do this. I don't trust anybody else to do it. If I give it to somebody else, they're not going to do it right. In so many ways, that's a horrible form of saying no. It's incredibly self-limiting, because if you can't make yourself replaceable, how are you supposed to advance or promote yourself? I think about that a lot in my role. Like, in my role at work, there are certain things right now that I know that if I left the company, my entire company would be in a really tough spot due to inherent knowledge that I have, that I chose not to delegate for a long time, because I was the guy who ran point. Specifically, it was related to bugs within our platform. I'm essentially the bug guy for my company. If anybody on the client team needs an update on a bug or needs to log a bug, the entire process goes through me. I liaise with engineering. I make sure things get prioritized. My boss is obviously very involved in that. But when it comes to the actual knowledge as to what each issue is, where things are, I'm probably the singular point of contact for my company in a lot of ways on a lot of that. And I've been working on delegating, saying, you know what, if I can't get this off my plate eventually, how am I really supposed to advance, get promoted, get where I want to go? And so many men, out of fear of other people not doing it right or whatever, ego, coming back to that, don't delegate, don't choose to do knowledge transfers, don't choose to get somebody else involved, and they just shoot themselves in the knees. Because how are you supposed to advance? How are you supposed to progress? How are you supposed to move on to bigger and better things if you just keep holding on to these things stubbornly?
It's a small word change, but it's not making yourself replaceable. It's making yourself promotable.
Yep. That's a positive spin on it. I like that.
I'll make the argument as well that being the only person who can do a task, whether it's at home or at work, and especially at work, it's selfish and it's dangerous to the company. And it's, in my opinion, poor form. And I'm not trying to bag on you, because I do it. I've done it too.
No, I recognize it, which is why I'm
trying to get out of it. Yeah. But it's selfish. It's not. We think that when we're doing it, we're being responsible for the company. Like, oh, I know how to do this. Like, I'm going to knock this out. I'm going to be the guy. Well, if you get hit by a bus tomorrow, now that whole company and all those people who are employed by that company are in danger, because a key part of the process can't go on, and now you're putting in jeopardy all of their paychecks. It's a dramatic look at it, but it's not out of the realm of possible too.
Yep. No, exactly. And that's, I recognize that, right? So it's setting up protocols and trainings and involving more people. And it's interesting to think, when it comes to something like that, I made that recognition at work a few months ago, and I've been making plans and like getting people up to speed. But at the same time, I struggled with this drip line crap at my house up until a week ago. It's interesting how one man, there's a dichotomy between how he can act professionally and how he can act personally at home. So it goes to show that this is an ongoing battle for every man. Yeah, you might be able to say no at work. Yeah, you might be able to say no at home, but you can't do it in the other location, or you can't do it with your friends or your parents. And that's something we haven't even gone into. There are a lot of times where men feel an obligation to their parents, and they won't say no when they should. And that can be very damaging. But that's another topic for another day. I don't know if we should go down that rabbit hole.
It is. And I'll just say this. It's been my experience that we're apt to put our egos aside a little bit more at work, because it affects, by not doing that, it affects our ability to provide food and shelter.
Yeah.
Putting our egos aside at home, that doesn't have nearly the dramatic effect that doing it at work does. Yeah. So we talked a lot about saying no and how to say no, when to say no. What about those situations where we want to say no, but we really should say yes? I'll give you an example of something that happened very recently, and this is part of the reason why we're having this conversation, is because we had polar opposite situations. I was contacted this week by a recruiter for a position that would be a big move up for me in a different company, and I took the call, and there was a lot of things going against it for me. The location was a much worse commute for me. Just the job itself, frankly, to be perfectly blunt, scares me a little bit because of the level of responsibility that I would be moving up into. It's an industry that I haven't worked in before. And then there's other things, but there's a lot of pluses to it in terms of financially. It would be a game changer for my family. Just stupid raise amount compared to what I'm making now. It would be a position that I'm looking to get into long term. And frankly, it's a little bit of an ego stroke when somebody reaches out of the blue and says, hey, we're interested in you. So I took this conversation with the guy. Before I took the conversation, I found out where it was and what it was. I was so tempted the entire time I talked to this guy about just saying, hey, you know what? It's been a great conversation. Thank you very much. But I think I'm going to pass. I'm comfortable where I'm at. That commute doesn't interest me. I'm not sure I can do the work, whatever. And I physically had to fight myself the entire conversation about saying no. I wanted to say no. I wanted to just thank him and pass and move on. But there was this little voice in the back of my mind that's going, well, why? Why? You haven't even moved the process forward yet. They haven't offered you the job. You haven't gone through an interview process, really. This is just a feeling out, kind of first interview with a recruiter. None of that has occurred. So why are you saying no? Why not ride this out into the end, see if you get an offer, and if you do, then make a decision? And I fought with myself the entire phone call about this, and I came to the conclusion that, you know what, that little voice is right. I need to. There's no extra burden. We talked about burden, and we talked about shouldering the load earlier on with not saying no. By saying yes, I wasn't taking on any extra burden yet. All I was doing was keeping opportunities open to myself. And I think that's what it came down to, is realizing that this is an opportunity. This is not a task. This is not extra work. This is not anything that's going to cause you to stress or worry or pull time away from your family or anything like that. So why are you saying no to something that could have such potential benefit for you and your family long term? And those are the situations where, as men, I think we need to stomp down our fear, because frankly, every reason why I would have said no was fear. It was fear-based. It was, am I going to be able to deal with the longer commute? Am I going to be able to deal with the stress of this job? Am I going to be able to learn the industry? You don't have to do that right now. Get more information. So I had to stomp the fear and just say yes to continuing the process. And those are the situations where saying yes is beneficial to us, even though in my opinion, it's the harder decision.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Like, that's a really, really good example. And it's so easy to just look at your situation and say, I'm comfortable. I'm good. Life is good. No complaints. And there's this fear, there's this hesitation, there's this reservation in the back of your head that eats at you. But just choosing to say, like you said, you looked at the pros and the cons and you decided to say yes, see where it goes. Obviously, my first inclination when you talked about this was to think of another job scenario, but then I did a little bit more thinking, because I think this is a situation that's going to be very applicable when it comes to careers, right? Like, we want to say no to a job opportunity. We want to say no to a promotion. I mean, I don't know who would say no to a promotion unless there's a lot of work that you're staring down, but different things like that. I went back a little further into the recesses of my mind, and I actually remembered a very interesting, beneficial scenario in which I historically would have always said no, but in this situation I said yes. So going back to my single days, as a quote unquote nice guy, I was always the guy who wanted to make every relationship work. I was never the guy to break up with a girl. If I was dating a girl, I was going to exhaust all of my options to pursue her until she said yes to me. So as you can imagine, I didn't have a lot of girlfriends in college because girls don't like that. So we go back to, this was the spring or early 2012. There were two girls I was pursuing. One was here locally. I wasn't super crazy about her, but she was kind of like, I was kind of interested, kind of seeing where things would go. And there was a girl that actually lived in Las Vegas. I'm in Utah. Vegas to Salt Lake is a pretty big drive, but I really liked her a lot. I went down and spent the weekend with her in Vegas and came back and was like, man, I like that girl. I hope things are going to go in the right direction. I really want to pursue it. And then I get a text from her saying, I didn't feel it with you. I don't think we should keep going, keep pushing forward. Historically, I was the guy who was like, well, why not? Let's keep working on this. Let's see what we can do to work it out. Yeah, stupid. I know. But that's what I would always have done. Around that same time while I'm going through this situation, like, this is fresh. Like, I had just gotten back from Vegas. I actually haven't ever told my wife this story in its entirety. So if she listens to this, this might be the first time she hears all of it. Sorry, babe. So I come back, I'm trying to figure it out with this girl. I get a text from a friend of mine from college, like this really cool girl that I'd been friends with for a long time. And she's like, hey, Brad, I have a coworker. I was talking to her about you. You know, would you be interested in going on a date with her? And historically, I would have always said no because I'm pursuing this girl in Vegas. I got to see this thing out. I've got to convince her that I'm cool or whatever, right? I had done that countless times in college where I had opportunities, but I said no because I'm pursuing some girl, and invariably they always flamed out. This time I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'll go on a date with her. That girl ended up being my wife. So it worked out for me.
There you go.
Yeah. But that's that. It boils down to, yes, it's a silly example. I know that there's going to be some guy out there who's going to listen to that and be like, yeah, I did that too. But it's the bigger picture of sometimes we stubbornly want to pursue something that we shouldn't. And because of that, we turn a blind eye to opportunities that present themselves that we should pursue.
I'm going to go back to what I said before too. It's a risk reward thing. It's a burden thing. Well, saying yes, in your situation, right? You weren't exclusive with anyone at that point. You were pursuing a couple of other girls, whatever, but nothing was, you wouldn't be considered cheating or anything if you went on this date. So what downside is there to go in and meet this girl?
Right.
Oh, hey, it ended up being your wife. That's awesome.
Yep.
But if it didn't, no harm, no foul, move on with life, right? So those are the opportunities. Yeah, say yes to those. Say yes to those, because you never know where that's going to lead. I can think of a lot of opportunities where either I said yes and it was just a wild ride, or I should have said yes because looking back on it, there was no downside to saying yes. I think about one. I think I've told you about this before, but so back in the very late 90s and early 2000s, I was a co-founder of a wakeboarding festival here on the East Coast. And it all started by a guy down in Connecticut reaching out to me who owned a board shop and saying, hey, we see all these things on the West Coast, down in Louisiana and stuff. What would you think about trying to put something together up here? He goes, I got the board shop. I've got connections. I just need somebody to kind of help, put it together. And I was fresh sophomore in college, something like that, freshman in college. And it very easily could have said, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. No. But I was like, I'll talk to you. Sure. So I took a drive down and we ended up putting on this wakeboard festival. It ran for 4 or 5 years. We got published in, like Wakeboarding Magazine. The biggest outcome from that, though, is that it resulted in a core group of us that started going on a snowboard trip. We've been doing that snowboard trip now for 25 years, and they are the guys that go on that trip are some of my best friends. I've been in their weddings. They've been in my weddings. They're like brothers to me. And all it took was me saying yes to this random guy that had a board shop down in Connecticut and wanted to do a wakeboarding festival up here in the Northeast. So what I'm getting at is you're going to be presented with random opportunities. If there's no downside to it, take the risk, see what happens. It's only when there's burden and there's stress and there's the ability to completely fail someone else where you should even be considering saying no. And I know there's a lot of dichotomy in this conversation that we've had today because we started with probably the first half of this, more than half of this conversation about reasons why you should say no. And we're ending with telling you, take the risk, take the chance, say yes. The difference is that we're telling you to say yes in situations where it's all upside, no downside. We're telling you to say no in situations where you probably are going to fail yourself or somebody else. And there's a good opportunity for you to take a look at the feasible outcomes. If you have a situation where the outcomes are almost all positive, right? So this wakeboarding festival, right? I go meet with the guy. What's the worst that comes out of it? I waste a day driving down to Southwest Connecticut and we don't end up doing this festival. Okay, no problem. My boss gives me a big project and I'm strung out to begin with in terms of time and I have no bandwidth, but I say yes. Now all of a sudden I'm scuttling my career. I'm losing, faith with him and that kind of stuff. And that's a problem. So there's places to say no and places to say yes is what I'm coming to.
I will challenge you a little bit in that you said that there are going to be times where you need to say no or yes, and there's no downside. There are going to be times where there's some downside. But if you actually take a step back and look at the absolute worst case downside, like let's just say, for example, here's a huge example, starting a business. You're going to start a business. That means you have to leave your 9 to 5, leave all that entails, start this business. The absolute worst thing that can happen, you're not going to be in a position where you're going to lose your family from that. you're probably not going to lose your house. Yeah, you might lose a loan.
Right.
You might lose that job, but your worst case, business goes belly up. You get another 9 to 5. You get back on your feet. You're out a few $1,000s. Hopefully not more. I mean, hopefully you're not going way too deep. But at the same time, that risk that's there, yeah, there's going to be some downside. But if you really think bigger picture, it's not, I'm losing my house, I'm losing my family, I'm losing my livelihood, I'm losing everything. Because if you have a business that fails, like we have, a mutual acquaintance who started a business, did that full time, it failed. So he had to go back to a 9 to 5, got back on his feet. He was out a few months and a few $1,000s.
Yep.
So it comes down to fear, it comes down to ego, and it just comes down to, as men, we have to learn to be okay. We have to learn to accept that we don't have it all figured out. That we're not going to let people down if we tell them no, and that it's okay if you are inadequate in some area of your life, because that gives you an opportunity of something to work on.
Yeah, it comes down to risk too. I think that was the point of my whole talk back there is if there's no risk to you, take the opportunity. If there is risk, then you have to balance it. And it's okay to say no and it's okay to say yes, as long as you've determined that you're comfortable with that level of risk. So, Brad, I mean, as always, man, this conversation was great. Why don't you tell the guys where they can find us if they want to share about their ability to say no and yes in certain situations?
We have our Instagram page at Untaming Masculinity. I'd encourage you to go there, comment, leave feedback, follow our page. Also, you can find us on Facebook at Untaming Masculinity. Find us on YouTube at Untaming Masculinity. Go to untamingmasculinity.com. So we strongly encourage you guys to follow us on the socials and especially subscribe to the podcast. Leave a 5-star review. Give us any feedback. We love these things. We're itching to engage. So go there anytime. Spread the word. Let your friends know. Let your family know. Let's get that word out there. We want this thing to grow and help men rediscover themselves. So, fellas, thanks again for joining us. We appreciate you listening. Make sure to come back next week. And until then, we'll leave you with just one question. What are you doing to untame your masculinity?